Application of EU law and direct effect. I'm going to begin this lecture by reviewing the doctrine of direct effect. In European Union law, direct effect is the principle that Union law may, if appropriately framed, confer rights on individuals that the courts of member states of the European Union are bound to recognize and enforce. The interesting aspect of this doctrine is that it is not a creature of EU treaties, but it was established by the European Court. The principle of direct effect was first established by the European Court of Justice in Funchen and Loge, 1963. ECJ has expanded the principle, holding that it is capable of applying to virtually all of the possible forms of EU legislation, the most important of which are regulations, and in certain circumstances, to directives. To establish direct effect, the European Court of Justice set the criterion that the EU article provision must be clear, be a negative rather than a positive obligation, unconditional, containing no reservation on the part of the member state, and not dependent on any national implementing measure. If this criterion is satisfied, then the rights in question can be enforced before national courts. Of course, whether or not any particular measure satisfies the criterion is a matter of EU law to be determined by the EU courts. There are two different types of direct effect, vertical and horizontal. In the landmark case of Funchen and Loge, it was decided that a citizen was able to enforce a right granted by European legislation against the member state. However, the courts did not go as far as answering the question of whether rights could be enforced against another citizen. Soon, in Deferin versus Sabena, the European Court of Justice decided that there were two varieties of direct effect, vertical direct effect and horizontal direct effect. The distinction between the different kind of direct effect can be drawn based on the person or entity against whom the right is being enforced. Vertical direct effect concerns the relationship between EU law and national law, specifically the state's obligation to ensure its observance and its compatibility with EU law, thereby enabling citizens to rely on it in actions against the state or against public bodies. On the other hand, horizontal direct effect concerns the relationship between different individuals. The horizontal direct effect includes companies as well. If a certain provision of EU law falls under horizontal direct effect, then citizens are able to rely on it in action against each other or companies. Certain provisions of the treaties and legislative acts such as regulations are capable of being directly enforced horizontally. However, directives are usually incapable of being horizontally directly effective.